What is the 4B movement and why does it have TikTok in a chokehold? Part one. We'll address this and more after this. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Pamela, and you are watching Pam Entertainment TV, where we review movies, television series, and incidents in pop culture to see how those incidents may or may not affect our daily lives. But you see the title of this. What is the 4B movement, and why does it have TikTok in a chokehold? Part one. All right. So, in my travels, as I peruse on the Tickety Talk app, I have been noticing. So I will be doing a series on the things that I have noticed. But let me just go really quickly what I've noticed. When I started watching TikTok in 2020, I noticed one thing. I noticed that there was a big push about black men only dating white women and why they do not date black women. There was a big old discussion about that. Then there was a discussion about, okay, you don't black women, we're too ratchet, we're too this, we're too that. So then we're going to divest from black men and start dating white men. Then there was the movement of the passport bros, and the passport bros were going to other countries to date the women because they said that the modern women here in the United States, we are too independent and we act like we do not need men. And so, therefore, they were going to go places where they were going to feel like they were needed. Now we have the 4B movement. And so, what is all these little different things? I'll go back again and talk about those other movements if you're not familiar with those things, because all of those movements are encompassed in the gender wars. So, I wanted to talk about this 4B movement because currently, baby, it has got TikTok in a chokehold. So, it has gotten to the point where there's a 4B movement, and we're going to talk about that and what that is. And now the men have decided to do a 4G movement, and we'll go over those things as well. But again, that's a whole nother video. But let's stick to what this particular movement is, because what I have noticed is that when something like this, and it's a gender war topic that's big on TikTok, that brings traffic to your channel. So you have a lot of people talking about this movement and everything like that. Now, one of the things about these particular movements, they start usually in uh, black women communities or women of color communities, and then they get bastardized because once, and I don't mean no harm when I say this, but you can see it happening all over. It gets bastardized when white women get to it, and then they try to make it into this uh a hate man love fest. And so that's what I mean by being bastardized. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, look at the Me Too movement that Tarana Burke had created for young black girls who had been essayed, and having a community where they can come in and talk about what happened to them and how they feel like they're moving forward, if they move forward or whatever, just a community that they can be able to talk. And how that Me Too movement was hijacked by white women in Hollywood, and then it became bastardized. Did it do some good? Yes, it got Harvey Weinstein out of here. Whether you believe it or not, it got Bill Cosby up out of here because Bill Cosby said that he was drugging women and doing all kinds of things like that. So it worked in certain things, but then you see it coming to a situation where anybody that does a particular woman wrong, then the whole movement rallies behind this, even if what's being said doesn't jive with the information that you have. And we've seen that in a lot of different cases. We've seen a lot of people's careers, whether they're in Hollywood or whether they're not in Hollywood. We've seen a lot of people's careers stall because a woman will say that this happened to me. And we have this thing about believe all women. Well, she needs to provide the evidence that's going on. And then we can be able to make a logical conclusion. When we just believe all women, there are women that tells lies, because there is a woman who was in the forefront of this Me Too movement. She got side handled. I'm going to get her name later. She got side handled because she had been doing some inappropriate thing to young men and young boys and young girls. So we want to understand what these movements are, the community that these movements are coming from, and how those movements are affecting the community that it was designed for. All right. So, what is the 4B movement? Now, I've got some screenshots. Let me make sure that I get all my stuff together because you know me, child. All right, let me share my screen. Let me share my screen. And again, please like, comment, and subscribe to this video. And once you subscribe, you'll be open to a plethora of different movie and television series that I have reviewed, and also these pop culture chats. If you would like, hey, consider to become a member. Hey, it's $1.99 and we go over a whole bunch of things. If you want to support this channel, super chats are welcome. Also, cash apps are welcome. And let's continue. Hold on. All right. So let's continue. I asked the question earlier, what is the 4B movement? And so let's do this. Let's share my screen. So this is, let me see, let me remove this overlay. This is a screenshot of a TikToker was doing this thing. Let me do that. So let's look like this. So it says the 4B movement. Now this 4B movement started in 2019 in South Korea. It says here, the 4B movement advocates for women to reject traditional gender norms and through 4 principles. Again, this is South Korean. So if I mispronounce this, charge it to my head, not my heart. I really want to get this correct. It's the 4 principles. These are the B's of the principle. It's Bihan. That means no heterosexual marriage. It's B Chuslan, no childbirth. It's Bione, no dating men, and bisexu, no heterosexual relationship. Now, they said that this movement was sparked by the Cho Nam-ju 2016 novel, Kim Jeong, born 1982, which exposes widespread misogyny and inequality in South Korea, emerged in 2019 as a direct response to the country's pervasive sexism. Now we know that happens here, but apparently in Korea, again, because we have to understand Western ideals are not Eastern ideas. And in Eastern ideals, in Eastern cultures, the best way it was explained to me is the West have spurned out of the Victorian age with England in the Victorian age. The East had no such thing. They had no Victorian age. So if it was traditional and misogynistic and everything like that, these types of things have happened through since the creation of that particular culture. And we see a lot of different things, particularly within the South Korean culture, that they talk about. So you'll have men who will commit violence against women, and they will commit murder against women. and these things are not taken in account. It's like, oh well, it's okay, he didn't really mean it. He was just responding for the fact that a woman wouldn't want to talk to him, or a woman wouldn't want to date him, or a woman wouldn't do all these things that particularly men believe that they do. It's about having onus of someone's mind, body, and soul. So one of the this let me share this next screenshot so that we can get into what was going on in Korea at this time. All right. So this is again a same screenshot that I got from TikTok. It says many Korean women are fed up with traditional gender roles and the prevalent violence against them. Because when you have traditional things like that, and even if when you look at the history of the United States, whether we want to talk about it or not, there were traditional gender roles that happened, and there were violence that happened within these traditional gender roles. That doesn't mean that violence is not happening now, but I think I wanted to point that out because a lot of people are romanticizing the 1950s. And if you are a Black person, if you are a person of color, romanticizing that era, you got to understand that there was some things going on. Even though civil rights was moving towards what it happened to now, within those traditional gender roles back in the 1950s, women were, when you got married, it was very difficult for you to get a divorce. So you had to stay within that marriage, whether that marriage was fulfilling, whether that marriage was abusive, whatever was going on within that marriage. Anything you did as a woman, because one of the things that I don't think we talk about with the 1950s, what people romanticize about this era in regards to women having children and cooking and cleaning and things like that. But anytime a woman had an intellectual thought and she was married and she wanted to pursue that intellectual thought, her husband had the authority to squash that. And what I mean by this, if she decided that she wanted to work, she decided she wanted to do, she couldn't do those things. She couldn't open because she couldn't work because she had to have the permission of her husband to do that. She couldn't, because as a single woman, she could work. But once she got married, usually she was booted out of the workforce. As a married woman, if she wanted to work, she couldn't do that. She had to have the permission of her husband. And even if she was working, if she wanted to open a bank account, a business account, or anything like that, it had to be at the behest of her husband, or she had to co-sign with the man. She couldn't establish lines of credit because, again, it had to be at the behest of her husband or a different man. So a lot of women who had potential to do a lot of different things were not allowed to do those things. So when women were feeling certain ways, or they wanted to leave, or they wanted to do something else, one of the things that we don't talk about in regards to emotional and mental health is that men had the right to commit their wives to a mental health institution if that wife was not doing what they wanted them to do. They were able to then say, hey, something's not right. She's not wanting to do this. Words like hysterical, words like, oh, she's just too emotional. You know how women are emotional. All of these things would happen. So when women were trying to fight back or talk, they were given lobotomies, they were given drugs, there was a lot of little different things that were done to keep you in this thing. So when you romanticize these 1950s and things like that, I need for you all to be able to think about that. Because I know for a lot of folks, it's nice to be able to know that someone could go out and work and you could stay at home and do that. That's fine, but you need to be very aware that when you romanticize about a particular time, you need to understand all the things that were going on within that particular time and time frame. But let's get back to this because again, we're talking about the 4B movement and where it started. Many Korean women are fed up with the traditional gender roles and the prevalent violence against them. Recent incidents, including a high-profile murders of women and crimes like revenge porn and spy cam sex crimes, wow, have fueled their discontent. In its 4B expose, the cut pointed to an incident of a man pruning from the timeline a young woman in a public bathroom, claiming he did so because women ignored him. The police, however, did not classify the incident as a hate crime. So, again, let me stop sharing this and let's go to the cut. Let's go to the cut because apparently the cut has uh, information that we need to go. And we're not going to make this long. We got a few more and we'll keep going. So, this is the cut. Let's see who wrote this because you know how I am about giving credit. Anna Louise Sussman. Okay, so she wrote this. This is the picture of the article. And let's go in here really quickly and go through this article. And then once we go through this article, hopefully we'll have more information about what this movement is. And then in part two, we'll talk about how it has been co-opted by Western women. Okay, so let's go through this. There we go. All right. And forgive me if I mispronounce these names, charge it to my head, not my heart. That's not my goal to mispronounce someone's name, but I am going to give it a college try. Young Me's childhood was a difficult one. The 25-year-old nurse was born to a poor family in Daegu, South Korea, for being one of the most conservative cities in the country. Young Min moms left the home when young Me was young to escape her husband's physical abuse, leaving her and her sister behind with him and their paternal grandmother. When she was 5, her 8-year-old sister started losing her hair from stress. As she grew older, young Me found herself depressed, unsure of what her future held, and financial instability. In Korea's patriarchal society, in which women are generally expected to defer to their fathers to adhere to rigid beauty standards, interesting, she felt like a perpetual victim obsessed by the wrong done to her by her father and pressured into maintaining her appearance in order to please men. Despite her meager budget as a nursing student, she purchased new clothes each session, spending a lot of money on cheap, poor quality clothes from H&M. Oops. And y'all over here think H&M is they anyway. I'm going down a tangent. She wore makeup religiously. I could not go outside without any makeup. I felt ashamed of my face, she said. I had this pressure of wanting to look beautiful and wanting to be desirable physically or sexually. While scrolling through Twitter in 2018, Youngmi came across footage of protests taking place in the streets of Seoul, Korea, where cases of femicide, revenge porn, and dating violence were widespread. A surge in spy cam sex crime, overwhelmingly committed by men, had mostly resulted in fines and suspended jail sentences if they were prosecuted at all. That was not the case, however, for one 25-year-old woman who had taken a non consensual photo of a nude male model at art school and posted it online. She was sentenced to 10 months in prison and court ordered sexual violence counseling. The demonstration were a reaction to the blatant hypocrisy. Youngmi was moved by the solidarity she saw, but there was one thing she found perplexing. Many of the women of the protest shaved their heads on camera. As she began to follow more feminist Twitter accounts, Youngmi understood this was all a public act of rejection for some of the same aesthetics expectation imposed on Korean women that have made the country a leader in grooming products and plastic surgery. She began to realize that, men do not do that. Men do not feel the pressure to buy clothes every season or wake makeup. Interesting. So let me go down. She's talking about what she's done. So here's some statistics. Soon Youngmi shaved her head too. Well, I'll be. And stopped wearing makeup, joining the so-called escape the corset movement happening among young women in South Korea. The movement, which first gained popularity in 2018, saw Korean women publicly turn away from societal imposed beauty standards by cutting their hair short and going barefaced. Youngmi was not alone. In 2019, a survey found that 24% of women in their 20s reportedly cutting back their spending on beauty products in the previous year. Now, you have to understand, in a lot of countries, in a lot of places, even here in the United States, it is a $1 billion business for beauty products and looking beautiful and all these little different things. Because I also often always see within the Black women sphere in community, uh, there is this big push to talk about dark skinned women and talking about because of the fact that we are darker skinned, we are not desirable, we are not pretty. And then when we do the things like wear makeup or lashes, then we're criticized for wearing those things. You should be natural face. You shouldn't wear all that makeup. You shouldn't wear all these things. But it's one of those perpetual cycles that you have, regardless whatever that you do. As a darker skinned woman, you're always perceived as ugly. You're always perceived as masculine. You're always perceived as not feminine. You're not thing. You're always perceived as loud. You're always perceived as your hair is too nappy, your hair doesn't grow, your hair doesn't do all of these things. And the biggest insult that people love to hurl at women when they're talking about that is that your coochie stink. Now, I would love to do a little physical phys ed class with you all about coochie stank, but that is an insult that gets thrown around, and then you see these multi-million-dollar businesses of yoni pearls and vaginal steams and fragrant stuff to put inside your vagina when all those things are unnecessary, because it is not the vagina, it's just everyday wear and tear odor. If you urinate, if you defecate, if you sweat, you're going to have an odor. And see, people look at women like, oh, you're not supposed to have that. Now you juxtapose this with men. These men walk and talk, they urinate, they defecate, they walk, they stink. They know this. We all know this. All of these odors that people talk about or they try to shame a woman for, most of the time those things are cured with a bath. Let's just be real and let's just be clear. But I went on a tangent. Let me continue. Let me continue. So this article is basically talking about young me. Uh, Let's talk again. I talked about the basis premises. We've got here, we have 4B. Practicing Bihan is the only path by which Krihan today can live autonomously. In their view, Korean men are essentially bound beyond redemption, and Korean culture, on the whole, is hopelessly patriarchal, often downright misogynistic. A 2016 survey by the Minister of Gender Equality and Family found that incidents of intimate partner violence at 41.5%. That's high. That's high. And you juxtapose that with the people who are married and then say 41.5% are these people. And these are the people that they know. You always have to add up to 5 or 6% on each side to show that it might be higher than this. It may be lower, it might be higher. Uh, Practicing Bihan, that's one of the 4Bs, means you're eliminating the risk that comes from heterosexual marriage or dating. Interesting. So they're not dating. And let me go back to that screenshot when we talk about the Bihan, no heterosexual marriage. Bichuslan, no childbirth. Biane, no dating men. And bisexui, no heterosexual sexual relationships. So you're talking about a society of women, 25 to 30% of them who are following this movement. Now, does this movement have any feet? Does it have any legs? Does it have any teeth? Well, let me go and talk about this. Now, they've started this since 2019. 2019. How does this shake out in 2019? Here's how it shakes out. They talk about this is an article written by Ellie Mitchell. back in 2023, and they talked about Korea's low birth weight. Now, it is my understanding that Korea is one of those countries that the birth rate does not equate with the death rate. So there's more people. Uh, excuse me. There are more people that are living longer, but there are not that many people that are being born. And usually, the ratio for people in Korea is like 0.8 births per 0.8% birth rate. So they're not replacing themselves. They're one of the countries that has a great octogenarian community. There's a lot of older people, but there are not enough young people to be able to take care of all of the older people. And so this is an article, go back and read this. This is an article that has talked about this. I want to share this article real quick, and then we will wrap this up because I wanted to get you all to understand what the premises or the four B's were in the 4B movement. And then we'll talk more about these different articles that I have on here. But I did want to present to you all why, how this has an effect. Because we talk about economically how this has an effect, and where the society has to come to grips with this, because it says here in Korea, fewer than 400,000 kids will begin elementary school in Korea this year as population dwindles. Now, we're talking about their population. Now, to be fair, their population has been stagnant for years. However, this is the highest level that they have had children that are not entering in schools, to the point where they have had schools, they've had uh, hundreds of schools, elementary schools, like kindergarten and things like that. They have had hundreds of schools to have to close down because they don't have enough first graders or kindergartens, second graders, first graders, or kindergartens. There are not that many more children going into school. So they're downsizing their schools. What does that have to do with their economy? Well, that means that the older people were going to have to be working longer. They no longer can rely on their sons and their family to take care of them. They're going to have to start working and working longer hours. Women are now choosing not, if they're deciding to have a child in Korea, they're only deciding to have one child. And if you're living in a society that's patriarchal, having a female child is not desirable. I don't make the rules. I'm not telling you it's right. I'm not telling you it's wrong. I'm just telling you, when you live in a patriarchal society, having a female child and you're only having that one child is not desirable, because they need for the men to take care of the families. Well, if the women are refusing to have the children, if the women are refusing to date, if they're refusing to get married, and if they're refusing to have sex, the population is not going to increase. Now, economically, that's going to affect them. You're going to need workers to work, and it is more desirable to have younger workers. Can older workers work? Absolutely. However, older workers they will die out, and their skills and their know-how will die out with them. If you don't have someone to replace them behind that, that economically is going to affect you. One of the things that one of my mutuals talked about, when we talk about living in a patriarchal society, one of the ways that it'll also affect is your military. South Korea is now having to really look at their military, because they're, with the dwindling population, they're not going to be able to have an effective military pretty soon. Will North Korea come in and do something? I don't know. Will China come in and do something? I don't know. But because they're not taking this seriously, you see the results of this socially and economically, and your military. All right, people, let me get back to you. Tell me what y'all think of this. This is my first part series. This is going to be a three-part series. I wanted to get to you all to tell you what this is. This is also, and it's moving over to the West. My next two videos will talk about how Western culture has taken over this and how Black women, white women, and women of culture have latched onto this. And I will give you all some information on how they are working this out in the thinking points and the talk points on TikTok. Also, we're going to be talking about the men's response. They're talking about the 4G movement, where they're putting their information in, and then I'm going to tie everything up on how these gender wars, y'all gonna have we're gonna have to stop all of this. We're gonna have to find a way to communicate and then execute what we're communicating. All right, people, we do this every week. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And please share this video if you care. Please tell a friend, tell a kin, tell your coworker, tell that heifer that you can't stand that I'm over here making these videos, child. And as always, people, bye bye.